Okay, this question is sent from 2.5, number 35/15. So this is like number 35 in the book, number 15 online, and it's coming from section 2.5. Probably, yep, domain and range. Or basically, we're telling about this piecewise function. I'll just do this on a whiteboard so you won't get mixed up with what's going on. It's a piecewise function, so therefore it's broken up into two parts. So you're going to have to figure out, find the slope of the line and figure out what it is. So let's go from here, left to right. And we've got a arrowhead, which means negative infinity as far as x goes. But what's the slope? Well, vertical over horizontal, 1 unit to 1 unit. So the slope is equal to 1. So m is equal to 1. And pick a point. I'm going to pick this point right here because it's 0 and it's going to be easy. So my x direction is -2. My y direction is 0. Now remember your algebra from 101 or 102 or 109 or whatever the case may be. This is algebra 1 type a problem. Use the point slope equation. Y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. And this is x sub 1, this is y sub 1. Plug and chug. Y minus parentheses, and that y sub 1 is 0, equals 1, because m is equal to 1, times x minus -2. So y minus 0 is y, equals 1 times x plus 2. So your final answer is y is equal to x plus 2. That is the equation for this line. So if you was to write it as a piecewise function, you would have y is equal to braces, and the first one would be x plus 2. And we'll put the domain here in just a minute. Well, the domain is from negative infinity, because that relates to that right there, from negative infinity to, what's this number x right here? This is -1 and +1, but we only need the x value since it is the domain. So from negative infinity to -1, and you include 1 because that's a closed circle. So from negative infinity, comma 1, and then this line, well, back in pre-algebra or algebra 1, you learned that if you have y is equal to a number, it's parallel to the x-axis. X-axis. If x is equal to a number, it's parallel to the y-axis. So this one's parallel to the x-axis, so its y is equal. So all you got to do is find out what the y is equal to. Well, the y is equal to whatever number it crosses the y-axis. So that would be 1, 2, 3. Y is equal to 3. So that would go right here. And what is the domain of that function? Well, it starts at 1, but does it include 1? No. So we put a parenthesis there. So from -1 to, this is positive infinity, so positive infinity. And that should be your piecewise function. Okay, let's see what else it asks. So let's see if we got that right. Okay, let me find my mouse. There we go. And x plus 2, and x is less than or equal to -1. That's the same thing, negative infinity to -1. That's the correct answer. I mean, I'll take either answer. And then 3, x is greater than 1. And that would be from negative infinity to, or x is greater than -1 would be -1 to infinity. So that takes care of that. The domain of this function is going to be from negative infinity to positive infinity. What about that gap right here, Hubert? Well, it's covered up by that gap right there. So technically, it's continuous, but it's non-continuous. But that number is overridden. That closed circle overrides that gap. So negative infinity to positive infinity because you got arrowheads. Now, if this was 2 open circles, then you would have negative infinity to -1, parenthesis, and then from -1 to positive infinity, parenthesis, because it has a gap because you have 2 open circles. And the range is negative infinity to, let's see, negative infinity to, where does it stop? 1, and it has a bracket on 1, and then basically just 3, because it doesn't move off of 3. So 3 is by itself, so that would be C. Okay? So again, you're doing a lot of analyzation, or you're analyzing the graph and telling what the features of the graph is, what the features of the graph are. You got to find the equation of this line because it's slanted. So you do that by the point-slope equation and find a slope and a point. And this one is a horizontal line. You got to also take into effect the arrowheads, which means as far as the domain goes, it's using negative infinity. And over here, it's going to be using positive infinity for parts of the domain. This arrowhead also says, as far as the range goes, negative infinity is going to be included in the range, but this one does not say that positive infinity in the y direction or the range is going to be included because it does not go up. It goes to the side and it doesn't falter from that pattern. So you just got to look at these things. You also got to remember this is a closed circle. That means it's inclusive. This is exclusive. So the inclusive overrides the exclusive, so therefore your domain would be negative infinity to positive infinity. Remember, if this was an open circle right here, if that was an open circle, then it would not be all real numbers. It would be negative infinity to -1, parenthesis, and then -1 to positive infinity. So if you're a list person, first thing you want to do is find the equation of the line. And to do that, you got to have a point, which I just picked a point. You can pick any point, and a slope. And you use the point-slope equation. Okay? The second thing you do is look at the second line, and y is equal to a number. It's a parallel line to the x-axis. If x is equal to a number, it's parallel to the y-axis. And you find the number that it crosses the y-axis, and you assign that number and assign the domain, which I did in the previous question. Or here we go. Here's basically the domain of that function, and here's the domain of the parallel line right there, and then you put those together, and that gives you the domain of the whole function, which is right here, because of the closed circle overriding the open circle. And then the range, self-explanatory. You go, this right here says that this keeps going, so all the Y values are taken up to this point, and that gets a bracket because it is solid. And then we don't hit any function till we get here, but it doesn't go up or down, it doesn't do anything, it just goes this way. So as far as the range goes, it's just one number, and that's 3. And that's why you get this nomenclature there. So anyway, analyzing a graph, you just have to sit and look at it and remember your algebra skills. Okay? I hope that helps.